Welcome to the San Diego Zoo. My name is Kelly. Becky joining us as well today. We're on the far end of the polar bear exhibit here at Polar Bear Plunge. We are the polar bear keepers here at the San Diego Zoo. We're going to spend the next couple minutes talking about our resident bears that live here. Front and center at our training wall here, this is Taki. Taki and her brother Kaluk both live here at the zoo. They're about 19 years old. And they've been here since they were very young. We're very fortunate to have these bears here. Both Taki and Kaluk were found out in the Arctic in Alaska. Their mother is actually radio collared. You guys have probably seen videos or pictures of bears wearing radio collars. That's how we keep track of our wild population. The radio collar that their mom was wearing actually stopped sending a signal back. So researchers did know that she had had some cubs. They actually went out looking for those cubs. Once they had discovered that her mom was unfortunately deceased because that radio collar had stopped sending signals. So they went out looking for those two cubs. Taki here, when she was found, came to the zoo, she weighed about 9 pounds. She's now well over 600 pounds. Her brother Kaluk, who's easy to tell apart from the other resident polar bears here, he's the one that weighs over 1,200 pounds. He's very, very large. He came to the zoo, he was about 12 pounds. So again, you can imagine finding these little bears being about the size of house cats out in the Arctic. Very fortunate to have them here. And we do have one other resident polar bear here at the zoo. Her name is Chinook. Chinook is in her mid-20s, and Chinook was found outside of Churchill, Canada, rummaging through some trash. She was in a landfill. So normally animals who have found human resources end up being candidates for euthanasia. So fortunate to have her here as well. One of the most common questions we get asked here at Polar Bear Plunge is, isn't it too warm for a polar bear here in San Diego? And that's an excellent question. Now again, all of our polar bears have been here since they were very young. We also supply them with multiple resources that allow them to thermoregulate. What that means is our polar bears can control their own body temperature, and they can change it if they'd like to, based on the various resources we supply to them. So one of those first resources is that big swimming pool right in front of you. That pool is actually temperature regulated. We can keep it typically between 55 and 65 degrees. We have the ability to drop the temperature below that here in the swimming pool, but our polar bears won't get in it if it's below about the mid-50s. That's too cold for a San Diego polar bear. So we keep it at a temperature where they'll actually utilize it the most. Now the other option they have, you can see that big rock facade at the back of their exhibit. Behind that rock wall is our indoor polar bear facility. You'll see at least one door open right now. Our bears have access to that at all times. Unless we're cleaning it, that's the only time they don't have access to their bedrooms. And it's air conditioned in that building. So again, on a really warm summer day, you might not see any polar bears outside. You might all be enjoying the air conditioning inside. You'll find a lot of keepers in the air conditioning on those warm days as well. Now also above that big rock wall in the back, you'll see 2 cubes suspended above the exhibit. Those are actually big snow machines. You can see we moved some of the snow around their exhibit today as well. So our bears have access to large amounts of snow. We also have big giant commercial ice machines in their polar bear facility inside as well. So again, multiple options. If our bears are too warm, they have the option to cool off. But to be honest with you, most of them like just laying out in the sunshine. Now, polar bears are excellent hunters. Their favorite food to eat is seals. That's what they're hunting out in the wild. And it's primarily the seal fat they're most interested in. Since the other thing that's different with their wild counterparts compared to the bears that live here at the zoo, their diet is much different than what they'd be eating out in the wild. We obviously don't feed them seals. There's no seal fat either. Our bears eat a much leaner diet. They get beef, fish, and lots of produce. That's primarily what they eat. And so they don't have that big layer of fat or blubber to keep them warm, like their wild counterparts do eating those seals. And again, it's not necessary for them here. So these bears tend to run about 30% lighter than their wild counterparts would. So again, polar bears are excellent in hunting seals. If you guys get a look at Tahqiq's big claws, you can see those would make great hooks to pull seals out onto the sea ice. And that's what the polar bears need to hunt, is that sea ice. They'll actually wait at a hole for a seal to come up and catch a breath of air. And again, they'll use those hooks or those big claws to pull them out on the sheet of ice, or they'll use their big paw like a club to knock the seal out, and then they'll pull that seal up on ice. Once it's up there on the ice sheet, it's no match for a polar bear. This is the largest land carnivore. So they're going to eat the skin, they'll eat the fat off that seal, and they'll actually leave the rest of the carcass. That's atypical for most bears. Most bears, when they catch a prey item, they're going to eat the entire thing. Now polar bears, though, again, they're only really interested in that big layer of blubber. That's actually very beneficial to other animals that share their environment. Animals like Arctic foxes, stellar sea eagles will actually live off of polar bear kills seasonally. So we do know, of course, that their environment is changing because our climate is changing. And that can be very detrimental for these guys, again, because they do need that sea ice in order to hunt their food. And as our climate is warming, there is less sea ice, which means that there's not the predictability of these guys catching a meal. So there are a couple things that we can do. Of course, we try to reduce our carbon footprint as much as possible with things that we know will do that. Things like recycling, walking or biking places as opposed to driving if we have the availability. Renewable resources are another option that if we have it, we all try to take. There are some other things as well that you might not necessarily think about to help reduce our carbon footprint. And one of the biggest contributors to carbon emissions is shipping. So when you guys are out doing your grocery shopping or shopping for Christmas, just check labels. You can shop locally. That means that those items don't have to be shipped across the seas, putting those carbon emissions into our environment. So if you can shop at local farmers markets when you're shopping for your produce, that's fantastic. If you're going to buy a home appliance or a kitchen set, see if you can buy those locally. And all of you guys are heroes for wildlife simply for coming to the San Diego Zoo today. San Diego Zoo is active in more than 60 countries. We have over 140 conservation projects going. And the majority of those are funded simply by you guys walking in the door today. So we want to thank you all for doing your part for helping save wildlife. But again, check out some of our websites, sandiegozoo.org. Probably has some projects going right in your backyard if we're interested in those. Okay, my name is Kelly. We've got Becky here as well. We're going to hang out. If you guys have any questions about our polar bears and any of the other animals here at the zoo, we can definitely try to answer those for you. I want to thank you so much for stopping by Polar Bear Plunge today. Have a great day at the zoo. Thanks, guys.
Tell us about the various actions that she's asking.
Yeah, so the behaviors we teach our animals are all husbandry based. So we teach them behaviors that basically allow us to take the very best care of them. So things like opening their mouths, showing us their paws, allowing us to touch various parts of her body. Tahqiq here is definitely a training star. You guys may see the shave spots that she has. She's actually trained to do voluntary blood draws. So those are areas where we've taken bloods. We actually have a blood sleeve in her exhibit. She's got a mesh wall kind of like this with a little attachment on the outside so she can actually stick her paw out. So that we can pull bloods. And she does basically like you're seeing here. She sits and gets snacks while the vets pull blood, which is no big deal for her. You might also notice that she's got a big blue spot tattooed on her behind right now. We do a lot of research projects with our polar bears, and she's in the middle of a research project right now. So we're trying to fill in the missing data from our wild polar bear info that we have. So in the hair, you can see when a bear has come across, say, a chemical or a stressor in their life. simply by looking at the hair. Same with us, you know, you can do the very same thing, test it for various substances. So they know that about wild polar bears, but what they don't know is how fast polar bear hair grows. So what we've done is we dyed that spot blue on her behind and gave her an isotope so we were able to mark when we gave that to her. And now we're actually pulling hair once a week from that blue spot and therefore analyzing how fast polar bear hair grows. So that way that information can be plugged back into the info they have about the wild polar bear population.
And the other polar bear doesn't come down for food when this one's being fed?
You know, you might see them kind of jockey for position every once in a while. You might have two bears down here, but they tend to take turns. The other two got their lunch as well in different areas, so she got her lunch down here. So they have access to food all the time. We do separate them for at least 2 meals a day just to make sure they get all the caloric needs. So they each eat at least 5 or 6 pounds individually, and then they again have access to all sorts of food out on exhibit all day long. So.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Thank you guys for coming today. What sniff's good today? Just being at this wall, I think, is rewarding for her as well. Get that cross breeze. Bears have an excellent sense of smell. It's thousands of times better than our sense of smell. So she can smell what's happening on the other side of the zoo right now. That girl.
How long have these two birds been sending?
She got here when she was about 9 pounds. So just 2 or 3 months old. She's 19 years old. Basically her entire life she's been here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks.